Vielen Dank.
So, da ist der John wieder.
Da bin ich wieder.
Da bist
Hallo.
du wieder. Und ich würde sagen, der nächste Slot wird jetzt auch wirklich spannend, denn wir alle haben, glaube ich, noch so ein bisschen Fragen zu dem Finanzskandal überhaupt und wo ist eigentlich Jan Marschalek? Aber
Ja.
gut, das können wir heute nicht klären.
Das können wir nicht klären. Wir haben viele Fragen und was mir irgendwie entsprungen ist, wie lange das jetzt eigentlich auch schon her ist. Und es ist trotzdem, der Prozess läuft noch bei Wirecard und ich finde, es ist auch an der Zeit, dass wir mal ein bisschen nach vorne gucken und gucken, was können wir daraus lernen, was verbessern wir daraus und wie geht es nach vorne. Und ich glaube, das macht unser nächster Speaker total spannend.
Ja, der ist nämlich Whistleblower. Ohne ihn wäre vielleicht all das gar nicht so richtig ans Tageslicht gekommen.
Richtig, genau. Der ist Rechtsanwalt gewesen bei Wirecard, hat gemerkt, hier läuft einiges schief und hat dann gesagt, so geht das nicht. Und das wünschen wir und besonders wir Journalistinnen, aber auch alle anderen wünschen uns das natürlich in jedem Unternehmen. Whistleblower, die sehen, wenn da irgendwas falsch läuft, das zeige ich an. Und dafür hat er jetzt auch ein neues Startup gegründet, Confide, das ist das englische Wort für vertrau's mir an. Darüber spricht er heute mit Christian Kirchner von Finanzszene. Darüber freuen wir uns jetzt sehr.
Genau, hier sind Christian Kirchner und
Pav
Gill.
Gill.
Herzlich willkommen.
Well, hello and welcome. I thought we could start with a very simple question. We Germans are always interested in the way we are looked at from outside. And as I've heard yesterday, you've been traveling through Germany for 4 weeks now, quite some time. Not for the first time, but what's your impression of Germany? What comes to your mind in the country that changed your life forever in terms of your biography?
Well, the beer is definitely the best. And it has a very strong effect. So I'm so happy I bought 2 blazers with me because the other one just doesn't fit anymore. So that's the impact of 1 month in Germany.
Okay. Well, at the moment, there are news about the trial in Munich going on with the Wirecard CEO, Markus Braun. Did you ever go there or plan to go there and pay attention to the trial and listen to what's going on?
No, it's always been a fun idea in my head, just to say hello to Markus Braun. But I understand the proceedings are mostly in German, and it's only as of last week that I was contacted for the first time by the court directly to finally appear. So yeah, it might happen at some point in the next few months.
Why did it take them so long to talk to you, to get information from you? What was going on? I mean, this has been going on for years now, and it's the first time the prosecutor contacted you was last week?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the prosecutors are not very keen because it's quite embarrassing. I sent them, the dossier of information. It was about 1 inch thick. It had an index page. It went also to BaFin. It went to EY. And the question, I guess my first question to all of them would be, which part of these documents that I sent you did you not understand? Because I even made it kind of idiot-proof, right? I had an index page, I explained everything. So yeah, maybe that's why they don't want to answer that question. And they didn't contact me, it was a court directly, not the prosecutors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a trip down memory lane, down to the days back in 2017 when you joined Wirecard. And can you remember the very first time when you thought, this is strange, there's something horribly going wrong in here?
Yeah, the first time was when I was told, I think, to meet this guy called Ido. So Ido was the third most powerful, I would say, finance person in the whole of Wirecard. What's interesting about Ido is that he was hired directly by the Munich. Burkhard Ley, the CFO at the time. And the thing about Ido is he didn't really have a CV that made sense. So if you look at his LinkedIn profile, you would see public audit company for 4 years. It's not named. And then 1.5 years in Rocket Internet, 1.5 years in Arden Capital. And suddenly he's hired by a multi-billion euro listed company, doesn't speak German, and he can barely put a meaningful sentence in English together. So how did he snag that role? And what's the most exciting thing about Ido at that time was that one of the first ways he introduced himself was by saying that he's married into a drug dealing family. So if that's not a red flag for me or for any payments company, then I don't know what is, right?
And then you found out the numbers didn't make sense from your point of view. Maybe you can just give us an idea what exactly was wrong.
I mean, if you looked at all the subsidiaries, at least in Asia Pacific, none of them were making money. They were all in the red for 5 years at least. They were always filing their financial statements about a year, 1.5 years late. So how come each time there were EBITDA results, quarterly results released, where were the hundreds of millions in profit coming from, right? Because the technology pretty much sucked. So every time Marcus Braun would say that we are a fintech company, all the employees would actually laugh because the terminals were so basic. Alipay was doing something much better. Adyen was ahead of the game technology-wise. So where was this technology? Where were the sales? I mean, the sales staff were pretty happy, I assume, because somehow they were getting hundreds of millions of deals in. So that was objectively a crazy way to look at the company.
And did you start asking questions about this at the company, or did you just think about it by yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I asked Ido, who was very flexible with numbers, let's just put it that way. So one day, a loss-making subsidiary would suddenly have a forecast of multi-millions or wasn't accurately financially, structured. I don't know. So he never had a clear answer, but he would always say that he's cleaning up this and he's cleaning up that. He's always on a plane. Once he even flew to Munich, to Asheim headquarters for just one meeting with Jan Marsalek, right? So, yeah.
You think Ido has been installed from Munich to take care of the turnover and the profits?
Yeah, I mean, he was one of the people responsible for doing those things, yeah.
What was the answer from the company officials when you started asking questions within the company? What is going on here? Did they give you any answers, or did they just tell you, don't ask any questions, please?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a legal guy, so, focus on your legal stuff, right? Don't get into the finance bit. But the problem is because I was hired to get licensing done in like Hong Kong, Singapore, and all these countries, finance and legal were very close, and we couldn't submit a financial report or a set of numbers to, say, a regulator if you're applying for a license and that company is dormant or just loss-making for 5 years.
So could you just give us an idea what happened between the time when you thought there's something horribly wrong here and the point where you sent a 1-inch thick papers to the BaFin and to the prosecutors in Munich? What made you do it? Was it like a fight with your inner self if you should do it, or if there's something is wrong, or if it's right what you're doing?
No, so the whistleblowing only happened after I left the company, right?
Did you leave the company, or did the company make you leave?
Well, they tried to kill me eventually, so that's what forced the resignation.
What do you mean they tried to kill you?
I mean, so basically, in a very summarized way, I'm sure many are familiar with what happened. There was an internal whistleblowing case that came to me. So this was a lady in Ido's team, and she was very afraid of her life for good reason. And after speaking to her, I told the Munich legal team, we've got a very serious issue. And they instructed me to investigate the company. They gave me access to Ido's inbox, head of finance in Asia's inbox, and another guy called James. No one understood what James did. He was like Ido's sidekick. He's in jail now. And yeah, so I had to investigate. I brought a top law firm in, Raja & Tan in Singapore, and what we saw was just mind-blowing and offensive to a degree because it was very low-level fraud. So I was expecting more. And that when the general counsel finally found out what was happening, she got very upset and she ran to the board. Apparently, her feedback was that Marcus Braun was upset as well. He's like, why are you wasting my time with 30, 40 million issues? And then Jan Marslek said, Asia is my baby. Who's this Pav guy? Asked him to stand down. He wanted to take over the investigation. And eventually he kind of did. So he rolled out an anonymous whistleblowing program, which went directly to him. So that was scary. So the company did a whole host of things, right? Like the general counsel and the CEO in APAC, they would shout at me, they would intimidate me. They created a HR issue against me, which took 3 months to investigate. And eventually, when that didn't work, Ido came back. He was actually sent to the US and promoted during this period by Stefan von Erfa, who's also, I think, on trial now. So Ido said, let's go for lunch, right? And so we went for lunch, and he's like, hey, Pav, you've been very busy the last few months. I was like, yeah. And he said, we want to send you to Jakarta. I was like, why? He's like, it's a rebranding exercise. Whether you go in 2 days, in 2 weeks, or in 2 months, you must go. So I found that pretty odd. And then he said, but you don't have anything to worry about because you know who my father-in-law is, right? Yeah, so that was a real red flag. And then during that same week, 2 people called me from Germany. We still used landlines at the time. And they said, hello, is this Pav Gill? We understand you're being told to go to Jakarta. Don't go, you won't come back. And they put on the phone.
Seriously?
Yeah, so that's when because I didn't go, finally the company had a legitimate reason to say he's insubordinate, he's not following instructions. And it's on that basis, they then forced me to resign / fired me the next week.
How serious do you think this has been? Did you take it serious at that time?
Yeah. Of course, because Ido was saying a lot of stuff. Like he said, Wirecard's known to make people disappear and a lot of these things, right? So he never gave further details, but after 4 months of hell, I didn't want to take that chance anymore.
So when you get calls like this, do you, as a potential whistleblower, start doing preparations? If something happens to me, you need to look at this. Did you start talking to people or like open a bank safe, put some information in there? Was there any preparation you did?
No, I told my mom, which obviously as a lawyer, I wasn't very proud of doing. But if anything happened to me, I mean, she's a single parent and I'm the only child. So she needs to at least know, right? If something happens. And then obviously that didn't go down very well with her. And she decided that she would find a way to expose this company. Yeah. So the moral of the story is don't upset an Indian mom.
Very nice. Some whistleblowers that I've been talking to have taken quite some time to go out with the things that they really have in their mind and the things that you do know. You say, sounds like it's been a very straight line with your life. You think this is a fraud, this doesn't make up, this has to become public. It was like a very straight line, if I get that right.
No, it wasn't a straight line because when the company forced me to resign, I said, okay, I'll leave, Wirecard, you enjoy your fraud, I go look for another job, right? But they didn't stop. So even after I left the company, they were sending people to follow us. They were creating fake job interviews where the interviewer from a friendly Wirecard company would be not interested in my background skill set, but why I left Wirecard. So you'll keep asking like, oh, something must have happened. You can tell me. So I then realized what they were doing. They were trying to use, knowing that I needed another job, they were setting up these interviews so that I said something wrong and then they can kickstart the process as well. And then, because it didn't stop, it kind of forced us to act. And one fine day, my mom told me that, hey, we are meeting the FT this weekend. And I was like, what are you doing? I'm a lawyer.
Okay. Well, in this Wirecard case, there have been a lot of people looking into it over 15 years. And I think there always was like a common idea. It might sound strange, but there are so many checks in place. We've got the financial regulator, we've got the auditor, we've got analysts, we've got investors. It's been a 20 billion company at some point in history. Bundesbank, BaFin, well, maybe I'm the ghostwriter and they are all right. Have you been at that point because you said it's a low-level fraud? It's been a low-level fraud. Were you absolutely sure about it, or did you at some point have some doubts that you might be the ghostwriter in this case?
I mean, it was low level based on what I saw, but the way the company was behaving with the board and all these people taking an extreme approach, I realized that this thing is really deeper than what it appears to be. And once the FT got the information, it took 4 months for them to finally publish it. And that was the time which was the most difficult because you are kind of in no man's land, right? Where you don't know if they're going to publish. Is the company still behaving the way they were behaving against us? And it was just very difficult. So finally, when the FT published the articles, and I saw the reaction of BaFin and EY and all these people, that's when I realized that it's not about one company, but it's actually about a lot of powerful agencies and individuals that are, for some reason, not wanting this to be exposed.
Okay. What do you think are the reasons behind that? Any idea?
No, I don't want to speculate on it. I'm trying to keep myself safe. So, but no, I don't know. But clearly, it could be it was a fintech darling of Germany, like the next PayPal. It could be that a lot of people had invested in it, retail plus sophisticated investors and stuff. And from an EY perspective, it could also be inertia, right? The fact that, okay, we have signed off for 9 years or 8 years. Do we now really want to go and say that we could have been wrong? So there were a lot of these potential reasons. What Wirecard was used for was, in my view at least, definitely as a conduit to move monies around between countries. But, we are finding out more stuff every day.
What was your personal low in the whole story of exposing this? Was there any point where you thought, I took some decisions in my life that turned my life to the worse, maybe? Has there been any point in this whole thing?
I mean, the lowest point I would say is when, right after the FT articles came out, my mom suffered a stroke.
Which was in early 2020, if I got that right.
2019, January 2019. And that was a low point because the stress had really got to her. And that's when you ask yourself, like, is it worth all these things? But then again, what do? Either you sit around and you get attacked by these criminals, or you stand up and you actually fight back, right? So that was probably the most painful point.
Did you think there's a relationship some correlation between the stroke and the things you went through?
Yeah, because she doesn't drink or smoke, and she's quite young. She's only 63 this month. So the whole family, everyone was shocked. And the doctors actually said that it was stress-induced. And as part of the stroke scans to figure out what was going on, they found out she had stage 2 lung cancer and had cut off half one of her lungs. So, all that was definitely stress-induced. And it's insane, but a lot of people also don't know. Once the FT started getting attacked and investigated, I reached out to Süddeutsche Zeitung, and they actually flew down to Singapore and interviewed my mom in the hospital. Yes.
Never really realized your mom has such an important position in the whole thing. You mentioned her a couple of times. Is she doing okay now after the stroke?
Yeah, she is. She's actually sitting over there.
Right. There she is. Oh, there she's waving. Hi. That's very nice. Okay. Well, let's just get back to the whistleblowing issue itself. So you wrote, how you do things like that? You print them out, you make like a big letter and you send it BaFin, Bonn, or prosecutor Munich, and you put it to the letterbox. What do you do? How do you do that practically?
Well, I mean, as a lawyer myself, I worked at Allen Overy, Clifford Chance, all these firms. And each time a big deal used to close, we would have to create what you call a transaction Bible. Had to have an index page, all the contracts and everything. So that's what I did. I used those skills finally, and I created about an inch thick with what I call the fraud transaction Bible, snapshot, whatever. And we decided we will send it. And it's very interesting. So one of the things that the FT told me is that you can't just print documents and send them out, because apparently there's like an invisible trace from the printer itself, which can be identified. So you print it and then you photocopy it somewhere else. So I told the FT, like, look, why don't you just go do it, right? So we then decided who to mail these items to. It was BaFin, EY, Munich prosecutors who, didn't understand it as lawyers, which is quite disappointing. And Singapore as well. Singapore actually raided the company right away after the third FT article. So they were the only regulators globally to have acted. Of course, once they raided the company with 30 policemen at 8 a.m. in the morning, Wirecard made a press release saying it wasn't a raid, we invited the police in. And people believed it.
Okay, and then what happened? After you sent all the stuff, you were expecting people to give you a call?
Yeah.
And
I mean, not me. I never came public until 1 year after the company crashed. So that's very important to remember as well. This is a very rare case of, I would say, successful whistleblowing, right? Most of the time, this doesn't happen. Whistleblowers are exposed, identified, a lot of bad things happen to them, the companies still exist, or the fraud still continues. So when these whistleblowers reach out to me and ask me what they should do, I don't have a one answer to them, right? Because each case is so different. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind.
okay. Do you think the steps taken since the Wirecard blow up are sufficient to prevent another Wirecard, or to make it easier for whistleblowers to expose things? I mean, there's a couple of steps that have been taken, especially in terms of whistleblowing. I would like to hear your perspective on the steps we've taken so far.
Well, I mean, financial crime as a whole is not punished strongly enough. That's my view, right? I mean, if you look at Binance couple of weeks ago, that guy got away with 4 months, paid a 50 million fine, and he's worth 43 billion now, sitting in jail. So the way financial criminals are being treated, it's as though the message to society is, this is a very lucrative career that people should consider, because you make a lot of money, you do a little sabbatical in jail, and then you come out and you can retire, be a philanthropist or whatever, right? And that's why a lot of these guys, like even in the crypto space, they are constantly coming up with new companies, even though bad things happen to the previous ones. So I think the message is not strong enough. From a whistleblowing standpoint, it is upsetting, and I've said this in the Financial Times, the way Germany has taken the approach to the Whistleblowing Act is one of the weakest in EU. The fine is about 50,000 euros, which is like some rich executive's monthly pay. And it's optional to process anonymous reports. So then what's the point? Like, most reports would be anonymous. Whereas if you look at, say, Spain, the fines go up to 1 million euros. So that's the difference, 50,000, 1 million. And so what is the message you're sending? Have you said, okay, we have suffered from Wirecard, Siemens, Volkswagen, Comex, all these things, and we are going to take a strong approach. We are going to make sure the whistleblowing directive is strongly enforced, or are you just going to do what has been happening now? So that's why the messaging is quite disappointing from the regulatory side, at least.
Well, as we all know, Jan Masalek is still on the run, believed to be in Russia, and a lot of people have not been tried ever since, even though they had a pivotal role in the whole structure. You helped to expose. Are you still afraid when you go home? Do you look around? Somebody's following you, or you feel safe?
No, I mean, I'm not afraid. I've never been that way. I guess I'm the kind of person that doesn't really process things much. So every day I wake up, it's a new day. Let's just move forward, right? Like, where's the next coffee I'm going to have and food and stuff. But I think if, based on the news that keeps coming out, the more we understand who Jan Marsalek is, the scarier it becomes. Because as I mentioned in the Capital magazine article yesterday or the day before, I said that I realized I've kicked the hornet's nest, not knowing how big that nest is. And at some point, it's best to just say, okay, let's talk about lessons learned and let the legal processes take over. Because that aspect of it is getting quite scary. The more we know about Jan Marsalek.
And I've learned that you personally did some things to help prevent other Wirecards, and you founded a company to help prevent other things like Wirecard, or to expose things like Wirecard. Maybe you could just briefly give us an idea what you're doing about the company you founded.
Yeah, so I've always asked myself, like, what is the reason it was me that had to be the one to expose this company in the whistleblowing sense? And I've also seen, as a general counsel, how poorly companies handle internal reporting cases. It could be anything. It could be a HR case. It could be a cybersecurity data breach case. Like, it's always so poorly managed. So I've seen it from that side. I've seen it from the whistleblowing side. So I told myself, why not create a company or a product that would benefit organizations, benefit people, as well as lawmakers. And that's how I came up with Confide. And I think Confide is a very powerful word, because every time you're in a situation where you want to speak up or you want to raise a concern, you don't know who to confide in, or you're over-confiding in the wrong person, or you're not allowed to confide because of legal privilege or NDAs and all these things. So I think, if companies have a sensible solution that's secure, you can run a full end-to-end investigation, all within the platform, there's no loss of audit trail, then I think, you wouldn't wake up as an executive one day and read about your company in the paper, because you would have dealt with it, and middle management and all these things wouldn't have blocked it. So that's the kind of idea behind the platform. Basically, I want to create less of me. So, you don't need to create, organizations don't need to create angry, isolated, disgruntled employees who find that because they don't trust what's in the company, their only solution is to now go outside, external, to the press, to social media, to regulators, and start. You don't need to do these things.
Well, we're almost finished. I would use the last question. The OMR is a lot about masterclasses. So can you just give us like a 2-minute or 1-minute masterclass when you are a whistleblower, or when you want to expose something? What do you have to keep in mind? Maybe you can give the audience some hints about the journey you've been to. What is important to have in mind?
The first question you should ask yourself is this worth it? Right? Is this really what you want to do? Because if you do go down that path, then there's no turning back. You make sure you do it 100%. Because if you're ever then in a situation where you've been identified, you have to be able to fight back and stand by what you're doing, right? So what matters to you? Is it your family? Is it finding another job? Is it exposing a wrongdoing? Is it speaking up? Are there ways you could speak up, or you could raise this concern without being identified? I think these are like real questions every individual should ask themselves. Because like I said earlier on, Wirecard is a very rare case of successful whistleblowing. And I only came out a year after the company crashed. So you can see, like, I didn't come out immediately because I was still waiting for the company to actually die properly. So they wouldn't be able to then, take legal action or whatever. So that's my message. So, but never be afraid to raise a concern. It's just how you position that concern that is the real skill.
Very last question. Any regrets or no regrets?
No, I wouldn't be here if I didn't do it. So yeah, no regrets at all.
Okay. Pav, well, thank you very much. What you did for corporate Germany. I think there's a tremendous thing you did. Maybe you could just say a big thank you. And And I've talked to Pav now last night. We've talked here on stage. I thought it was always nice to talk to him. Very interesting and insightful. We didn't take any questions because we have a tight schedule, but he's happy to talk to you. He'll be around, and you can find him on LinkedIn. Get in touch with him, either if you have a question or if you're an investor in his company. Absolutely, or you want to be an investor in his company. Feel absolutely free. And Pav, thanks again. Was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.